Let's talk Tanya for the 15th of Adar. A happy Shushan Purim. We're still in the larger topic of joy. Today is actually the last part of Tanya that talks about this topic. Yesterday we spoke about the idea of taking joy in the nearness to God, even if we can't internalize the concept of God's unity and we don't feel that nearness. However, when we study Torah, knowing that God's unity is expressed in a very revealed way in Torah, we can take joy in the study of Torah, as we discussed yesterday. But what about the rest of the day? And the answer that Alter Rebbe gives in today's Tanya is we can experience that joy through tzedakah, through giving charity. Why specifically charity? Our sages tell us that the way to come close to God is through giving charity, or through being compassionate and merciful. There's a pasuk, there's a verse in the Torah that says, we're supposed to connect to God, we're supposed to cleave to God. And our sages say, how does one connect to God? And the answer is, Mahu rachum, afata rachum, just like God is merciful, you should be merciful. Just as God is kind, you should be kind. And when we follow in God's path, when we are merciful and we are kind, we are becoming close to God. Now, what's interesting is that the sages don't say, well, just do mitzvahs, because every time we do a mitzvah, we are connecting to God. There's something unique and special about being kind and compassionate and giving charity. It's not only that I'm doing what God wants and thereby nullifying myself to God, but actually, when I'm giving charity, I am channeling God. It says in the Zohar, Chesed D'Roya Yemina, which means kindness is God's right arm. When I am being kind, I am God's right arm. I am channeling God's kindness. God's kindness is flowing through me. So there is a certain experience in tzedakah and charity which there isn't in any other mitzvah. Yes, I connect through every mitzvah, but the idea of becoming just simply a vehicle for God, that is something which is unique to tzedakah. When I give tzedakah, and when I contemplate this idea, that right now I am becoming a conduit for God, that brings me joy. And it's not only when I'm giving charity. When I go to work, what is the purpose of my work? The purpose of my work is to be able to give charity. So how much charity do I give? 10%, 20%. But at the end of the day, 100% of my work, the purpose of it is to be able to, again, be a conduit for God, to be able to be a kind person and channel God. So I'm experiencing this nearness with God, not only when I'm giving charity, but actually the entire time when I'm working, I'm actually at this point, it's all about my kindness and all about being God's right arm. With this, we have concluded the topic of simcha, positive emotions, joy, and it boils down to identifying with the godly soul. Then I could feel the joy, as we discussed in chapter 33, the joy of doing a mitzvah. And as we discussed in these past two chapters, in chapter 31, it was the joy of doing a mitzvah. And in these past two chapters, chapter 33 and 34, the joy of being close to God. None of this in any which way negates that which we spoke about in the earlier chapters, in chapters 29 and 30, about the lowliness of the body and the animal soul. And that is a Jew. A Jew lives with both of these feelings. I am a broken person and I'm somewhat crushed by the fact that I have a lowly, materialistic, coarse animal soul and body. I am ecstatic and excited and filled with joy because of my neshama. And these two aren't a contradiction to one another. In fact, it is because I am broken and crushed because of my body and animal soul. That is what takes the ego out of the way and allows me to experience the joy of my soul. With this, we have concluded one major flow of ideas in Tanya, which takes us through the first 34 chapters. Very briefly, the first 8 chapters of Tanya were about self-knowledge, getting to know ourselves, our godly soul, our animal soul, their structure and components. The next chapters were about the struggle between the godly soul, the animal soul, and the possible outcomes. That takes us through chapter 13. Then we find out of the possible outcomes, we're supposed to be a Beinoni. We're supposed to aspire to struggle, but to overcome the struggle in thought, speech, and action. And then we had a few chapters taking us through chapter 25, which gave us 2 larger strategies how to overcome the animal soul in the battle. There was the long way and there was the short way. Chapter 26 through chapter 34, which is we're holding right now, is where Alter Rebbe says, all the strategies I gave you to win the battle, they're all dependent upon your ability to maintain a state of positive emotions, stay away from negative emotions, and that was the last group of chapters telling us how to deal with negative emotions, how to deal with emotional unresponsiveness, and how to gain simcha, how to be in a state of joy and positive emotions. With this, we have concluded, again, the first large flow of ideas of Tanya from tomorrow's Tanya, which begins chapter 35 to the end of Tanya. Chapter 53 is another big flow of ideas, which we will introduce as we begin tomorrow's Tanya.